Hello, everybody, and welcome to Max Spoilers on Deathloop. I'm Kyle Hilliard. Janet Garcia is here.
Yo, what's good?
This game. And Leo Vader is here.
Hey, what's up, man?
And before we dive into it, we, of course, want to remind you that we are a Patreon. And if you support us on Patreon, you can actually unlock a podcast version of this video. So you can just listen to it instead of looking at our faces. And when you do that, you get podcast versions of all of our content, including other Max spoilers and our upcoming Deepest Dive on Metroid Dread, which Janet and I are doing. And I'm very excited about it. Are you excited about that, Janet?
Yeah, it'll be my first Deepest Dive. So I'm excited to see what's down there. I've heard a lot about it.
We're in for it. So, okay, Deathloop. We've all beaten it. If you're watching this, it's safe to assume you've also beaten it. If you haven't beaten it, maybe, go do something else. Or maybe you just want to know what the game's about. Just watch it anyway. I'm sorry, what was that, Leo?
Watch Minimum Spoilers, our other show.
There you go. Which I guess would be the Game Informer show. Oh my gosh. Not the Game Informer show. What is going on with me today? That's where I used to work. I don't work there anymore. This is MinnMax. This is completely different. The MinnMax
dropped
show.
It the other day. It's been years.
I don't know what's
what year are you in right
me.
now? How long have I been on this island? How long have I been on Black Reef?
God, that's right. Shit. Oh, thousands of years. Spoiler alert. That was a cool factoid to me. It seems like hundreds, I guess, maybe thousands.
Yeah, landed on centuries, I think. Which we could start anywhere in this, open-ended game. But it's really interesting that maybe time is just passing for the rest of the world normally. Like the loop is really contained to this island.
That was the impression I got from my ending. I don't know where you guys are at. There are multiple endings. Janet, did you get all the endings or just one, or how'd you handle that?
I just got, we'll just jump straight to the end. So it's like, I always feel like so tentative because I'm so used to being like, oh my God, like we can't say anything. We can talk about the ending. Okay. My ending was, I think, the wildest one in the sense that like, and I'd love to hear what y'all did, but when you get there, you get to Juliana, you took out the other visionaries. And for me, I came in stressed and pressed. Like I was on my last life. I mean, you get your slab taken away anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I was like on edge. I'm like, don't mess this up. I did it on my first run and I had a hard time. And I was like, please don't make me do it all over again. I had fun. I don't want to do it again. So as soon as I saw Juliana, she's like, I'm unarmed, by the way. And I was like, bet. And I killed her before. We didn't even talk. I just shot her. I didn't even get to the chairs. I was like, we're coming in strong and wrong. I'm shooting. She's dead. I walked up to the thing and I'm like, okay, it says you see all the words floating in the air, like jump, you'll, just you end the loop, break the loop, jump to your death and stuff. And I'm like, okay, hopefully this is like not, the game would surely not make it so I can die here. So I did that. I woke up on the beach. I saw her and she sort of like looked at me, shook her head and like walked into away and kind of disappeared in a glitch type way. And then I looked at the other endings as well. But just to start there, what were y'all's endings?
I killed her, but in a personal way after we'd spoken. I gave her that
I at least let her talk a little bit. Jeez, Janet.
The assignment was to kill all the visionaries. I'm like, if we don't break the loop, and I'd love to know how y'all like thought about this, but I'm like, if I don't break the loop or try to break the loop, what was this all for? Like, that's the whole point of the game.
I definitely felt similar. Like it was it was certainly Colt's goal to break the loop, and there was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to do whatever needed to be done to break the loop once I got in that room. But yeah, we had a conversation and we talked. She showed us the antique guns, and then we counted down to 3, and then we, shot each other, and then I leapt off the side, in an ending that felt at least aesthetically similar to the ending of Cyberpunk. It feels like you're in the same room that you end Cyberpunk in a weird way.
Yeah, it also gave me Control vibes too, like just kind of walking along a long hallway into an isolated room with a chair. I'm like, this could be a Remedy situation.
And of course, Dishonored vibes. Those pistols.
Oh,
a lot of vibes are floating around.
Yeah, of course.
It was Vibe City.
But yeah, that was my impression, was that because you kill Juliana, you jump off the edge, you wake up and it almost feels like a nuclear apocalypse. Like you're still on Black Reef, but the sky's all messed up. That was like kind of my impression, is like the world is kind of like ended, and maybe Black Reef was just this place where things were still moving, humans were still alive. Like maybe I'm like overthinking it, but And then the first thing I did was check all the trophies that were hidden to see if there were alternate endings. And they actually, as far as I could tell, they didn't have any other trophies to commemorate alternate endings. So I thought I got it. It wasn't until we started talking about doing this discussion that you guys revealed to me that there are sort of variations on the ending. They're not super different, but there are a handful of different endings.
Did you look up the other ones that occurred? Like if you don't kill Juliana?
Yes, I watched those. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's my sweeter ending almost.
Yeah, but it feels so like, oh, I don't know. I was mixed on it. So like I did look them up afterward, like all the permutations, because I think there's like a couple, even though there's only like 2 choices, like you either kill or you don't. But I watched my boyfriend finish it, and he naturally did the one where he didn't kill Juliana, because when the gun thing happened, I think he tried to pull the trigger, but he did it too late. So I'm like, I guess she's just alive. And then you like choose like whether you sit in the chair or whatever. Again, there's a lot. I feel like it's so much in conversation with so many other games that play with time and weird anomalies and like fate, because you know, like the whole like will you sit or will you not, like it kind of gave you that Matrix dichotomy vibe too. But he like, you know, woke up again on the island, and they were like sort of chummy. They were like, oh yeah, I guess like what, you know, want to get a beer tonight, and like, oh, you can call me dad if you want. Like it was a weird casual situation that sort of implied that like they're gonna keep doing this and like they're gonna still try to kill each other, but it's like more for funsies than for a goal. But it just kind of felt like it took some of the weight and the drama off of the rest of the game. Like I guess we're just playing for fun, and I don't know, part of Deathloop is how fun of a game it is to play, so maybe that makes sense narratively, but I don't know, it's that kind of funny with me.
I think that's interesting because it did, like you're saying, recontextualize like why Juliana was even so hell-bent on killing you the whole game. Like, what was your guys' read on her actual motivation for that, especially in light of it being like something she can switch off at the end after a very short conversation?
I mean, I guess we jumped straight to the end, which I'm totally fine with. Like the end is interesting, but the other sort of like mid twist, for me at least, I didn't see coming, and maybe I'm very stupid, was that Juliana's Colt's daughter. Like I for some reason it never even occurred to me that could be a thing. You know what I mean?
About 3 hours into the game, I played as Juliana to try and break the loop and fight some Colts, and like the third one I went in, there was a dialogue conversation between Colt and Juliana referencing that she was his daughter. Oh, and it's like,
that's so interesting.
Wasn't going to find it up for 10 hours.
It's funny because it's like I was about to be like, oh, it's a bummer that's how it's spoiled for you. But it's like, even if you're just straight playing the single player game, which is what I did, it's still kind of just dropped sort of casually. You kind of learn that Colt had a relationship with a woman. And then in like a couple dialogues later with Juliana, he's like, hey, you know, I found this document, and she cuts you off and she's like, yeah, you figured it out. I'm your daughter. And I loved how flippant she was about it. Like, it's like, because that's how she would react to it, because she's been through it so many times that it's like, yeah, dad. Yeah, I know this. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. I'm not going to like sugarcoat this for you, you know?
Yeah, I definitely thought, I was surprised that she was his daughter, in the sense that like, and again, maybe I wasn't like paying enough attention, but they set it up so like, I don't know, there's like that implied like more romantic relationship, because he mentions that too in the beginning, like, oh, did we date? And then when she like hates him, he's like, we definitely dated. Yeah. And it's like, they do kind of set you down that path, and then they twist it. And I'm like, why do games keep doing this to me? I don't like this. Why do you keep like setting up this romantic thing? And they're like, just kidding. That's your kid. I also thought it was hilarious because, and I'll try to find the tweet that I saw that of the critic that pointed this out, but they're like, I can't believe Deathloop got me to play another dad game. And I didn't even know I was playing a dad. I'm a messed up dad again. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so true. I didn't even like, even after playing it, I think just because you find out that relationship, but I feel like it doesn't get super explored in a meaningful way. Like, you obviously know there's some beef there, right? Because she's still trying to kill him. It's not like she doesn't try, but she also mentions that she's like, well, we were living fine, and then you try to kill me, so like now I'm gonna kill you, and it sort of just kind of became so. I kind of wish they, I guess, dug into that a little bit more, since it was there.
Yeah, they left a lot open to interpretation, for better or worse. Certainly, like, knowing what really caused the loop. Like, I thought we were gonna get some kind of twist about that, but I guess it's just as it was pitched to us. There is a loop, and it's because these 8 people are alive. But I like Juliana killing Colt just as like, because it's such a consequenceless thing to do. It's like just getting out her anger about her relationship with her dad by basically just pretend killing him over and over again.
Yeah, and I guess like to your original question of like her motivation, I don't think it's even that she like. Do you think like she hates Colt as a father, or do you think she just hates him because he's trying to break the loop? Like, I don't. Is he a deadbeat dad? I'm not even sure.
I got like a weird both situation. I feel like, you know, and obviously we all have different relationships with our parents, but I feel like if you don't, the fact that she even calls him Colt, like the thought of like me ever calling my dad by his like his government name, like it just feels so uncomfortable. And I feel like I would only have that feeling with someone where I don't have like a close relationship, where almost you have to remind yourself like, oh yeah, like this is like this title or whatever. So I don't know if he's necessarily a deadbeat dad, but there's clearly like some deeper beef there where like maybe they weren't able to foster a normal relationship because of the anomaly and things, but like they don't have a traditional relationship.
And it also feels
to say the least. Yeah.
The way this game treats losing your memories, the way Colt has had happen multiple times, and the way, you know, you start to remember things at the start of the game, it treats it as kind of like a new personality in a way, because I don't know if you guys found that gas chamber where that guy locks you in and fills it with gas, and you can figure out. Did you like complete that? Because I never actually went back and did the puzzle after I kind of think I figured out what to do. But is it interesting? Please tell me, Leo. Yeah, I brought the trinket where you don't get hurt by gas, so I could take all I needed to figure out that puzzle. And then, yeah, once you get in that control room, you find out that that was a room that Colt used in the past to like torture people, basically Eternalists who weren't fully on board with the Eon program, and kill them. And you think about like the dark history of Colt that we really don't know much about, and you wonder how much that informs Juliana's perception of him more than it does his own perception of himself.
Yeah, like maybe he's more evil than we kind of really give him credit for, you know, if we dig into it, sort of. Yeah.
Or at least used to be before he's aged 100, 200 years.
Yeah, it's like weird that...
No, go ahead, Janet, please.
Yeah, like how I was just going to mention, like, it's kind of wild, like this whole like personality change, because like finding out that he was like head of security, and it's like, oh, like I am actually like, I am part of what created this problem that I now have for myself. And I'm so like curious to know like what caused that shift, because you mentioned like why do I wake up every day wanting to break the loop, and Juliana's like, I don't know why you do what you do, but like I can't stand your guts and I'm gonna kill you. So I do think that shift is like really interesting, in going from like, and either way he's still like a bad guy. I feel like he was a bad guy even when he was a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a sweet. He's certainly killing everyone, and talks about how much he likes shooting everybody. You know, he doesn't feel any remorse for just blatantly killing everybody.
Yeah, he could kill them less painfully than he does in his execution animations.
Totally. I also the other like the learning that she was his daughter was kind of felt like a revelation to me. And then you mentioned, Leo, I don't know how long they've been in the loop, but it was certainly much longer than I expected. I thought maybe, like when you wake up on the beach, I don't know. I thought maybe you had like been on Black Reef for like 2 or 3 months worth of loops. That was just my assumption going into the game. But then the more you play, like, of course it's been years, like centuries even, right? It's been like 300 years. I feel like she almost said 1,000 at one point. I know you ask her point blank and she's like, it doesn't matter. Why does it even matter? But it's certainly been more than like 300 years that they've been looping there, which is insane. Also, we know that like they're, you mentioned like what's outside of the loop, like the anomaly, like is humanity still there? Well, like we know that he did break out of it before he like left the island, and then he came back. So that's the other thing. And then she's like, right. Why would I come back? And she's like, you love it here. Like you love being here. So I like how there's almost like loops within loops where you have like the time loop itself, but also this idea that Colt has gone through this whole process. There's a version of Colt that's gone through the whole process of getting off of the island and still coming back. So we have like so many iterations of like loops, even in terms of the motives of the characters.
Yeah, I think the timeline of that from what I was reading about it today is like he spent 17 years in the loop the first time, as confirmed by like Juliana's dialogue at some point, then broke out of it, then went to like this mental institution, and then was kind of rescued from there by the Eon program and took the job as security coordinator for the current loop.
Okay, and then he just sort of lost all faith in the program, I guess, right? And decided he wanted to break the loop.
Yeah.
Right.
Like after a couple of years, you're like, this isn't really like what I thought it was. Like at first, it was like this big fuss and you got the free sweatshirts, but then after a while, it's like, what are we doing here? Is this what my career is?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, I think back to it now because like, you wake up on the beach and you see pretty quickly, like once you understand what's happening, you're like, I got to break this loop. But I feel like if Juliana had just been like, oh, no, you this is a loop and it's actually really cool and you love it and you are not interested in breaking the loop, it seems like he might have taken that at face value and just been like, that sounds right. Because it seems like he's just handed that direction to be like, break the loop. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to break the loop.
Right, like is Colt, so is Colt dumb? Like, I don't know. But then also I think to that point, like Juliana could just like tell him and then it'd be over. Like, she mentions at one point too, and like I love these little like interspersements of dialogue that's sort of very like depending on your playthrough or the order you do things. At one point she's like, you're reading all these messages and stuff, you're reading everyone's emails, you're reading all these notes, like how do you know? You don't think that we know that you're reading our stuff? You don't think I'm right? What's to stop me from writing whatever I want and just leaving it behind for you to find? So I think she sort of like takes joy in that. I almost wonder if people are sort of like so used to Colt, like there's Colt trying to break the loop again, and they're just kind of casually handling it. Because even like in their approach to stopping him, like people mention like, shouldn't we be like hunting him or something? And they're like, like he'll come through and we'll deal with it when it comes by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he also is informed by obviously the like messages that he sees and no one else sees. That's a lot of his feeling like he has to break the loop, I think, is having that appear to him.
Did you guys ever, is there like a story explanation for why that's happening? It's not something I ever saw, but I also, I guess I could say I did like one playthrough, so to speak, where I like, I created my perfect day and broke the loop and called it a day. So I didn't dig too deep into that kind of stuff, but is there context for why he's seeing all those words and things on the world that no one else sees?
I don't think there is anything given, no. But I don't know if there's that many ways to read into it, really. Like, unless it's a twist that it's not other versions of him, because that's what it seems to be clearly implied to me. Is those other guys
magic marker to just write in the sky?
That is the question.
That's like what I thought of it as. I'm like, it's just, well, I almost think of it. Yeah, you know what I think it actually is? I feel like it's not real. Like, I don't think he's the only one seeing it. I think it's more of like the embodiment of his memories. Similar to like if people watching or listening have played What Remains of Edith Finch, like that has similar sort of narrative text kind of floating throughout. That's obviously a lot more like of a narrative style, like a narrator, rather than this being like thoughts. But that's sort of, I thought of that as like, this is a convenient way to quickly give the player that feeling of many memories like resurfacing at once. And then from like a not getting super confused standpoint, it's nice to have them written there because then you don't have to like hear them. Like, can you imagine how overwhelming it'd be if you heard like break the loop like, a million times over? Like that would be really like intense. So I feel like it's kind of the embodiment of that.
Agreed.
I gotta say, I'm not fully, I don't fully understand why sometimes you would see versions of yourself. And then there was the one doctor whose name I don't remember, who was working with herself. Like she worked with all these sort of like, what was that?
Wenji.
Yeah, Wenji. And like, I didn't quite understand why sometimes they would show up and others don't, but it seems like not everyone has versions of themselves from the past. Is it just like a very specific situation? Do you have to be a special in some way? Do you have to be a Wenji or a cult to even activate that, I guess?
Yeah, the question is if it's the same reason that Wenji does it is the same reason that Colt can do it, which I don't know if it necessarily is.
And it's like, because it was like, you meet what, like, I don't know, 3? Like there's a young version of Colt, there's like an older version of Colt, and maybe there was like one more. There's like an
eternalist
around
version
the same
of Colt.
age.
Who's like kind of covered in like the sort of spray painty look that they all have, though they all have masks. So I don't know if he's like, I'm just taking my mask off and underneath he's still spray painted. I don't know. And that's part of like, I think I was like reading into like the lore that like is written on like fandom and things, like kind of collecting all the pieces. And they mentioned like that being part of this idea of like, oh, the Eternalists are part of like this grander vision. So I think him being maskless, but also still like painted is sort of maybe him breaking out of like a role as an Eternalist that at one point in these timelines he had that. I don't know if he got like demoted or promoted from there or what the logic would be. I kind of took them as almost like glitches because like the ending like that I got, and I think in a lot of the endings, Juliana does that kind of like glitch fade out where she's walking and then she just kind of disappears out of thin air. I feel like that's kind of what those are, where they're not like, they're like temporal abnormalities within the giant temporal abnormality that we have.
You know, I assume she just used the ether
Wenji's
slab.
just smart enough to have. I'm sorry, Leo. Go ahead.
I just assume she used the aether slab to turn.
Oh
invisible.
yeah, like disappeared. Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought she like. I thought she just like glitched out.
So for Colt, maybe it's like a little random where you get the multiple cults, but Wenji, she's very smart, so maybe she figured out a way how to sort of like capitalize on it, where Colt is just kind of random because it's like a glitch. That makes sense to me.
I heard people theorizing that they Wenji was like pulling versions of herself from other dimensions, and maybe that's confirmed in one of the notes.
Oh, as opposed to like okay, yeah.
So maybe Colt is that kind of situation where just the power of the loop and the anomaly and the rack can like have those kind of dimensional crossover if just the multiverse is an assumed real thing in this world that just has some kind of consequences here.
Another multiverse. We can't get away from it.
Yep.
Yeah, where's Colt Ham? What's a good pig pun for Colt? I don't know. It sounds like you guys dug into like the communities and like lore a little bit. Did you find anything that like really interesting that Deathloop fans have figured out in terms of like any kind of revelations or anything like that?
I
think so.
I'm interested in the Dishonored universe theory. Like people are really reading into those pistols at the end, which obviously were Dishonored style pistols. And people thought that, you know, the island of Black Reef could have been, you know, whatever whaling town from Dishonored in the future.
You know what? That makes sense in the sense that I saw like reading into like the history of Black Reef that it used to be like a fishing, like a isolated fishing community before it became a military base, and then it became like the abnormality loop.
Totally. And the big
I love
thing
that because it could totally just slot into Dishonored's universe, like right, just well into the future. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, the things that really got me interested in it as an actual possibility and not just like fun from the developers, which developers like to do that, just nods to their other games without really saying they're in the same universe, is you can find the Whaler song from Dishonored is like an audio log you can find apparently.
Oh, really? I mean, it would also explain why you have some of the same abilities that you have in Dishonored.
Yeah,
too, right?
like, and why the UI is the same. Like it was pretty funny playing this as like my first game from like this studio because I was like playing Deathloop and my boyfriend was playing Dishonored 1 because he had never played it and he had it like on another like monitor in our living room and I would like glance over and he like vice versa and I'm like, oh yeah, this is like literally, I'm like, he's like, oh, you got the red bar and you got the blue bar and you have like this thing just has a different name and like even like some of the layouts of the areas, like just something about like the fundamental architecture felt similar, but you know, obviously iterated on, where he was kind of like, man, I wish I was playing that already because like it seems like it kind of clears up some of these like more technical stiffness or like gameplay stiffness from it just being an older project. But yeah, I like that idea. I think it's really cool too when we think of like, again, I brought up Control and like Control is very much sort of like that with Alan Wake where there are those kind of like tie-ins and nods and like ways that it can fit into the whole thing.
The other thing that makes it compelling is somebody found a PowerPoint slide from early in the game's development when Colt was named Captain Berezin, but it says it's an image and it says Black Reef backstory, and it has a timeline laid out, and the first thing on the timeline says Death of the Outsider in 1852 or whatever, and like what happened there, and then it moves
was
into,
like this was a public thing that Arcane released?
I don't know if it was public.
Okay.
Or if it was
so
internal,
it might have been like an early pitch kind of document.
Right, and they could have said, "Never mind, we're not going to do that." Like that's perfectly likely, but it's really interesting. I think. I
love that, man. Like I love that kind of stuff. It's like, why not? Like it's your IP, I guess you could say. Like, why not wrap everything together if it makes sense? You know, I don't know. I would love that idea. You know.
Yeah, where it's clearly not the least bit necessary, but fun as hell if you are a fan of both franchises.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember go ahead, Janet, please.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm curious to know, like, you know, kind of tying into that, like what y'all thought of the general like narrative structure. Like, did you feel like you got enough of the story stuff up front? Would you have wanted to present it differently? Do you kind of like that you have to dig for it if you want more out of it? Like, what was your general takeaway from that? Like, did you feel satisfied with the story that you got in the way that you got it?
Yes, overall, yeah. I did like it. It is. I was texting a friend earlier. Shout out to my friend Aaron, and asking him, "Hey, how's Deathloop going for you?" And he sent me a text back that was just kind of like, I don't know. It's not really like clicking for me. And I think that's like fair. I think it took me about halfway through to kind of understand like exactly what I was doing and to get really engaged with it. Like up until that point, I had just been kind of going through the loop and sort of, it's like, I guess I'll go try to kill these people to get better abilities. But then at about like the halfway mark, when I started to click and I understood how the story was kind of being distributed and why information was as powerful a reward as like getting a new ability, like I ended up really enjoying it. And then like you said, Janet, I mean, it's very much like you can dig into the sort of the scientific aspect of it as much or as little as you want. Like I found myself not digging into it very much. You know what I mean? So yeah, I liked it overall. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt at times that it was a little front heavy and back heavy story wise. I would have liked maybe a big story moment in the middle there somehow. I know that's tricky because it kind of, you know, sets it up and then lets you go crazy in the sandbox. And then once you have everything nearly put together, then the story starts hitting harder again. And I was kind of like missing that. It had been a long time by that point since anything really major story had happened.
Hundreds of years.
I think like it was a little weird for me. I was okay with it overall. I wasn't in love with the story. I just feel like it kind of took you in a few different directions. And then when it was over, I'm like, I guess this is the main point. You know, the whole thing's about breaking the loop. And I think they do tie that in well, where like the ending is in relation to the loop. And you're left with these questions about like, what is the future of Black Reef? Or like, I guess, you know, depending on your ending, you're like, I guess Colt and Juliana are cool and they're just going to keep living and killing each other. And it is what it is. But I guess I felt pulled in a couple directions because I kept getting information that I thought would lead to some type of resolution. I'm like, oh, there's multiple cults, so maybe we'll figure that out. It's like, oh, not really. Oh, like you're my daughter. Okay, cool. Are we gonna do something with that? And they're like, not really. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I think when there's really heavy mystery, like stuff that like invites you to be very into the lore if you want to be, I find it a little more effective if there's like one really core thing that's driving you. And again, I'm keep coming back to Control with that because I think Control was very much like that. Where I finished Control and I was like, okay, like I kind of didn't really know what was going on or what had happened, but that I felt kind of okay with because I had like a driving thing about like, okay, I'm trying to figure out like why I'm here and what's going on with like this other character. Versus in Deathloop, I felt like pulled in a couple different directions, and then at the end, I'm like, yeah, the loop, we're here still. And it just kind of, I don't know. I wish it had more to what I was trying to really get through, which maybe was the point because like you're in this loop and time doesn't matter and nothing matters. But yeah.
Yeah, I think because I love like so many franchises that have unanswered questions and open-ended stuff like that. But I think there's a fine line where it's fun to theorize about and you come to the end of it and you go, did they know what was going on? Like, do they have answers for this? And I think Deathloop was unfortunately a little more of the latter for me. It was just like a little too sparse with actual information.
Yeah, I mean, you do have that very clearly stated goal, right, of break the loop. But I totally see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, Jenna, where like at the end, I broke the loop and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that was what I was trying to do, and I did it. But I still don't really understand why it was so important to me, you know, and like how it all worked. And maybe that's there. Maybe I just was too focused on breaking the loop, like Colt was. I don't know, but yeah, it's. But I mean, I get the sense that I still liked it a little more than you guys. Of just like I liked how it was structured and how I liked the goal of like just having a perfect day, right? Just having a perfectly scheduled day.
That's my goal.
Get everything done on the to-do list. You know, like You get stuff done in the morning, you get stuff done in the afternoon, you get stuff done at night, and then you just, you feel good about yourself because you got everything done and you can just relax at that point.
I will say,
I feel like that's what Deathloop is building toward.
To that point, even though like I was a little bit more like lukewarm on the overall story, I loved the ending of the game in terms of like the mechanical ending. Like I think and I've like lightly tweeted about this, but I try to be really careful on social media because I don't want to like ruin games for people like super early on. So I'm like, I don't want to be too specific, but here we can be, which is great. I adored the ending of this game. It was like the best boss battle I've done maybe in my whole life. I mean, it's not a literal boss battle because you're like it's more like a mission chain, but it was sort of like, I think it was just so perfect because it did exactly what I want from games personally, where I'm like, I want the ending or the big final challenge to feel like the sum of the things that I really have been working on in a more concrete way. And my beef with a lot of boss battles is like, depending on the genre, especially like, I always go back to platformers where it's like, yeah, we're still jumping, but like, I don't know. It's not like how the levels are designed. So it's not the same thing. But here it's like, nope, we've been doing this the entire game. And now it's here for like and I always think of that freaking, what is it? Nancy, like the skating story, Nancy and what's her name? Tanya Harding and like whatever, is it Nancy Carey? Whatever.
I, Tanya?
Yeah, like the skating thing where like there's a documentary on it, and at one point they go like, she's like, yeah, you can just tell she went, tonight I will skate perfect. And I felt like that when I was Colt, like this is the day. And like I put on the suit for the party and stuff because you have those different like cosmetics and things. And I loved it. It just felt so good to feel like doing all of it together. And you got a little bit of it, and then it ends with the party. And I do think the party is the most difficult thing to pull off because there's like 3 visionaries. There's a lot of people if it goes wrong. And it just felt so good. Like I adored the ending of that game from like a mechanical standpoint.
I totally agree. A boss fight is tricky to pull off like a climactic thing, but that really felt like you said, the sum of everything. I will say the disappointing part of my story was at the start of the day, I said maybe I should turn Juliana Invasions off because this is an important day and it sucked to have to reset it a bunch. But then I was like, I've been playing with it on. I would love for the climax of it to be me overcoming whatever Juliana I face, whatever real player. And I faced her a couple times during the day and beat her. And then in the evening, where there's 3 Eternalists at once, for a second she wasn't there and I felt relief. And then it said Juliana's on the hunt and I was terrified and I was sneaking around and I wanted to find her before she found me. And I creep up, and that the entrance to the Dorsey mansion in Upton, those 3 guards that are standing in front of it, there was a 4th guard there. And so I was like, I've seen this so many times. I know that one who's standing out of formation is Juliana. And then I shot her and she was frozen and she didn't move. And I just shot her multiple times until she died. And it said you killed her. And then 2 minutes later, it said she left the server. So like my final Juliana encounter was some poor person who like glitched out or got frozen or something. And it was kind of anticlimactic that way. But the story didn't come together every single way for me. But like everything else that this game does great, and so much about the story, like maybe the finer details didn't fully come home for me, but like I really enjoyed it the whole way through.
Are you a big Arcane guy, Leo? Have you played all their games or?
Dishonored 1 is the only one I finished. I liked Dishonored 2 and I liked Death of the Outsider, but something about it didn't stick with me. And I theorized it's like, or rather didn't make me stick with it. And I theorized it was like the world is so oppressive and intentionally beautifully ugly in Dishonored. Like just weird faces. A lot of
plague rats running around those games,
Yeah, right, exactly. And just weirdly gross and just a world I didn't want to spend time in. And this game was like the complete opposite. Like absolutely every region was fascinating at every different time of day. And I was always excited to pick it back up.
The art style is just so nice and like vibrant. And it's got that great mix of, it is retro-y and very 70s, but it's like a little bit futuristic in certain elements. And like when I first started the game, and like I am huge on like environments in games. Like I love, and I don't really like play a lot of like things where you shoot a lot. So I'm like I can shoot when I need to, like in Deathloop, but I'm like, oh, it's not really a me game necessarily. So like, I'll just spend time like walking around being like, look at these books. Like I know I'm supposed to kill people, but like we're just here hanging out. And I loved being able to do that so immediately, like when you enter, like it's not, I think you're on your way to the library when you first start the game, but like seeing like the 70s conversation pit, and then there's the candy machines that you can kick and the candy falls out, and then apparently like Eternalists can slip on the candy.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much like care and additional thought. Like, and I love seeing so much of like other games that I've loved over the years in this. Like, I think the way you like can get the free ammo from the little like vending machine is super cool. And I was like, okay, like now I'm thinking about BioShock, and I just kept having like these, and which is funny in a game all about time, but like these great like mechanical memories of like things I love in other games and being able to execute or explore or do that here. But yeah, it was so much fun. And I'd love to know who are y'all's favorite visionaries? Like, 'cause I think the plot for me didn't really hit, but I loved the writing and like the characters a lot in this game.
I loved Charlie and his games, specifically his, his big game in Updom. That was like the one I grinded the most to get shift slabs, because obviously that's the one slab I never went without. And I thought that was such a fun setup and so interesting. Like taking his like empathy out to make his robot 2-bit. I thought that was all very interesting. If I can segue into my favorite Juliana story real quick, which was spoilery, Please. So I didn't talk about it on anywhere else. I'm in Updom. I'm on my way to Charlie, and then I see Juliana's on the hunt, and I say, I know exactly what I want to do. And I ran in, went to 2-bit, and selected to mark as the invader, which is you have a few options to tweak the game once you get to know 2-bit better. And you can set Juliana as the invader, which means that she'll get attacked, and the PA will call out, it calls out when you enter. The invader has entered whatever, and you know what zone you're in. And it was doing that for Juliana. So Juliana eventually found me in there, and I got call outs.
This is a player character, right?
A player Juliana, yeah. Okay. Came in and I was getting these call outs on where she was, and I was creeping around, trying to get the jump on her. And I was up top, and I heard the invader has entered orbit. And I was like, where is orbit? And I looked around, I was like, oh God, that's where I am. And I looked behind me, and she had just entered the room right behind me. And I threw her with Carnesis and shot her dead. And it was so satisfying and empowering. And then a few minutes later, I opened the Steam overlay, and I saw messages I had missed from my friend Manton, who said, hey, I come in peace. What are we getting up to? And he was the Juliana, a friend who had invaded me. And I was just like terrified for 15 minutes straight and playing around him, but he was really just coming to hang out. And I eviscerated my friend with this weird ass game.
That's awesome that you can have 2-bit call out a player like that. That's really cool. That's something I never would have run into or discovered. That's really awesome.
I love it's clear that they built it with Juliana in mind, and it wasn't like a tacked on multiplayer thing. And that makes a huge difference for me.
Yeah, I like Wenji a lot. That was like one of the first ones I encountered that I killed. Just that idea of like having to kill, I don't know, how many do you have to kill ultimately, like 12
I think
or
like
something
30
like that?
Or something. Like I feel like it's a lot of them.
You just making your way through, like kill, because it was very much like, I've already gotten to one of these guys. Okay, I'm gonna kill them, and then you see that like another marker pops up on your screen, and then like 3 more pop up on your screen, and it's not like a difficult. None of them are really bosses. They're not really difficult necessarily, but it's just like I loved hearing her argue with herself about like scientific ideas and like even the morals of like them working together and like who's smarter and who isn't, and like I loved like creeping around and hearing that stuff and then killing like 3 of them and then having to move into the next room and kill like 4 of them. I really enjoyed that one a lot.
Yeah, I also really loved Fia, the art designer with the underground nuclear bunker, because like figuring out how to deal with that bomb is so fun. I had this hilarious moment where I'm like, I failed to defuse the bomb because I didn't get it that run, and I was like, well, I'll try and get out of here. I know it's supposed to blow up the whole island, but let's see if I get out of here before it blows up, if I'm safe. And then I am fighting dudes my whole way out. I die, and I reprise, zoom backwards in that great effect, and I end up right in front of the reactor staring at the countdown clock as it hits 0%. Like I just got sucked back in time right in front of the bomb, and that was hilarious. But I just love the detail that like she designed all this stuff. Like that's why the Eternalist looks so weird, is because of Fia's personality.
Yeah, I liked her design too, with her little like high Ariana Grande ponytail that she had, and she's like super strong too. So she's like running around and like is like this chilled out artist, but then she's also like very murderous and really powerful.
Well, her slab is the one that like made her super powerful, right?
It's like, kind of what is it? Right? That's not kinesis. What is it? Havoc. Yeah. So it's like, and I also like shout out to her because like I told the show on like the main, MinnMax show, but like I am awful at being Juliana. Like I suck because I'm just so afraid and I have no aim and no like I'm like I played so much of this game and I don't know what I'm doing. But I invaded my boyfriend's game a few times, which was its own form of fun. And that was the only time I had like any form of victory was when I was with her because she was really powerful and that when I like knew. Like I love how you can know like where people are going based on like what kind of area it is because I'm okay, where you're gonna have to be by the bomb. And like, I know that like, and then I started like doing next level stuff where some people use the cameras. Like, okay, if this camera was hacked, we know Colt was here, but I'm like, well, I don't want you to like train these turrets on me. So I'm actually just going to destroy all of these things and you're just going to have to like wander around and not have any mechanical assistance. But that was super fun. I also like that, the relationship between her and Charlie, right? That's the couple, Fia and Charlie. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like that, I think that's its own kind of fun. Like I liked finding out that they were like together, and then like he wrote that song for her, but like he had to have Frank compose it because he like lost half his brain, and he was like, "It was your idea to like get rid of half my skull." And that song is like one of my favorite songs, like in the game or like in games over the last year. The City Lights song, it's so pretty and so fun, and I don't know why the hell it's not on the official soundtrack. Like I don't understand, but
that's surprising.
Like, I loved like little details like that and getting involved in all that stuff. My favorite visionary is Alexis Dorsey by a mile. He is a piece of garbage and I love that man so much. I think he's a great example of a well-written but dislikable character because he's like total trash. And I love that they lean into that with making you carry his little bobblehead guy who's like talking the entire time, like drawing everyone to you. And he's so annoying. And I love that. I love when games are on the level of writing where they really can predict what the player is going to feel, because I remember like probably saying out loud, like, oh my God, is this thing going to go on the whole time? And then Colt's like, is this thing going to go on the whole time? And I'm like, bro, we're right there together. So I thought that stuff was so smart. And yeah, I love him as
also when it does stop right before the audio loops again, he has a moment where he's like, oh, okay, good. And then it starts back up and he's like, oh, damn it. And I totally same exact
talk about
reaction.
myself. Well, like, oh, like he's such like he's so trash. And like, I love how they like played it up too with I'm like, of course he's like, and I love craft beer too, but like he's the craft beer snob who's like, it tastes better when it's on tap. Like my favorite thing is like chocolate beer. And like, I killed him in the brewery. And like, I just loved his character. He was such an overarching snob. And I like that some of the other visionaries hated him too. Like it was just, he was my favorite by far.
That mansion was just really fun to explore and go through multiple times too. There were like so many routes and such great design, so much to discover in there, and so many people. Like the most intimidating visionary for me for sure, because he's so surrounded and you don't know which one he is at first.
Yeah, it took me a while to like navigate that area. That was like probably the hardest area to navigate because there's so many areas and entry points, and like I built my strat because I was very much using like the invisibility one and Nexus at a certain point. So like I had to like stealth my way through everything. Meanwhile, like if you were using the what's the teleportation one called? Like Zoop one. Shift, like you could just shift up the side of the mountain and enter in the bottom of the brewery area. And I'm like, man, shift players have life so much easier. Like I'm over here like, and then hack the turret, and then those people are gone, and then we wait, we're invisible, we turn the corner, we pause, we go up the stairs, there's two people there, you can get like, I'm doing all this extra work and like y'all are just zooping through on the side. But yeah, it was such a fun area for such a great character.
Did you guys use the music looper in the mansion?
No, because I turned off his chocolate beer. That's what I did.
That's what I did too.
Because the looper thing, you kind of have to have a really good, at least from my perspective, you have to have like kind of a good understanding of the layout to know where the correct song is to like turn it off somewhere else. I don't know. It was like a few too many steps for me.
Yeah, I couldn't crack how to make it bad enough that he would come up because everything sounded good. Like you are just changing the drums and the bass.
DJ.
Well, the fact that it like I think it's different every time, right? It implies that for some reason he just, depending on the loop, he just likes every version. So
it was just fun to change that song up like one piece at a time. That was just such a cool little thing to throw in.
Yeah.
I want to go back there though, because I was looking at the trophies as well. Like I want to like adjust it so that I can see him do his little dance. Like I didn't get that. I'm like, I just kill him in the brewery every time. That's how I do it. There's also a trophy for killing him in his own meat grinder, like the one he has underneath the stage. And I really want to do that as well. And I like that, you know, they were thoughtful about those things when they like added in those like little trophy detailings. It's like very much rewarding you for getting to know the area or playing with the abilities a lot. And I think that's super fun because it's, to me, definitely the strength of this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good game, turns out.
I liked it a lot.
It's definitely my favorite Arcane game, and that's not to be dismissive of their other games. I think I'm on this weirdly the same exact page as you, Leo, where like I played and beat Dishonored and enjoyed it. Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider didn't click with me. Prey, which is I know technically a different studio, didn't really click with me either. But Deathloop, I really enjoyed. At about the halfway point, I will say the first couple hours I was kind of like, I don't think I really get this, but then it clicked with me in a big way, and I was really happy to see it to the end.
Yeah. Did you guys encounter Pick Rexley? The character Pick Rexley?
No, this sounds like something you made up.
Well, I made it up, but they're very cool. I watched a video earlier. It's a totally missable side thing. You just have to like hop in this window on the side of this building in Upton, I think. And it's the one other character who remembers the loops.
Yeah, my boyfriend had found him, and he told me the same story where he's like, yeah, like he knows, and then you tell like Juliana about it, and she's like, nah, and that's like that was like what?
Yeah, but the story with her is so interesting. It's like it made me appreciate the storytelling a little bit more as like here is just a place where interesting stories are happening, and it's not necessarily about the overarching thing. And her story is kind of essentially you resolve it by proving to her that you're going to break the loop. And she says, okay, I'm worried I'm going to forget because we loop so much. I'm just going to forget about you and forget to have any hope that it'll ever be broken because I've been here for hundreds of years and have forgotten so much. So I'm just going to kill myself at the start of every loop. The first thing I do when I wake up is just to kill myself. So I make fewer memories so that I remember that you're out there trying to break the loop. And then you never see her again. Weird. Like she never goes to that place or gets to that point where you meet her.
That's so sad.
That's sad, but interesting. She didn't want to fill up the hard drive. I kind of want to go track her down. I didn't know anything about her.
I do like that there's so much to dig into. Like I do think that element's fun. And I kind of lightly regret how I played in the sense that I think because there is some fun lore stuff in here and some fun side stuff, I kind of wish I had started it and played through it a lot slower and just done like a much more completionist type run. Like getting to rewatch my boyfriend play through it, I was super excited because I'm like, okay, great, you're playing. So I don't have any like energy zapped up. So I'll read the notes because I'm like, I actually want to read these notes now because I was like a little too lazy to like read them all in their entirety because some of them can be quite long and there's like dozens of emails and these computers. And there's like so much fun to be had in like the little things, even just like, and you know, on the computer in Colt's apartment, like everyone's usernames and then being like, oh, they kick Colt out of the chat because he like goes rogue and stuff like that. Like, I think there is a lot of like care in that stuff. Yeah, so I do want to go back and check out all the things that I've missed because I'm sure there is like a lot of stuff there.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
They should release less games right now so I could just play this more. I don't know what they were thinking.
Rude.
Every year we run into this. It's frustrating.
Every year we have this problem.
Well, that's it for me. Did you guys have any other final Deathloop thoughts?
I think it got a bad rap. A lot of the complaints I've heard about it are like it not being as open-ended as it claims, like it guiding you through it to the point where, you know, that golden loop, you have it as that one path, right? You just mark it as the quest you want to do, and then it walks you through doing everything. You know, that's not necessarily a totally wrong complaint, but I think it's like missing the forest for the trees a little bit. It's like there's so much special about it. And there's the fact that you can play this 15-hour campaign in any order at all is kind of crazy and a success in that way. And I think like there's some Easter eggs still that I barely even got to dig into today, just reading about them online, of like this nest of spy bunkers that like one code brings you to another one. And then like there's so much there that is not straight up tutorialized. Like if you really, really give this game a lot, it will give it back to you, I guess.
I agree. Yeah, go play this game. It's really good. It's one of those transcendent pieces for me where I feel like if you like games, you should go play this. Like I feel like it's not so difficult that anyone is going to have too hard of a time with it if you've like if you're used to playing games in general. And there's just so much there. I actually really do like that it's so guided, because it's like, okay, you can really experience all that you want, and you don't have to worry about like keeping track of all this data in your head or doing all this additional planning or getting your, so I'm not above getting out the notepad or like the iPad to write down stuff or taking pictures, but it is nice to be able to have it a little bit more on rails just so you can get that full experience. And it's just such a fun game to play. And I think even though I have some story qualms, overall, like the lore of it is fascinating, and there's like a lot of fun and heart and personality in it in a way that I don't necessarily feel across all games. Like this one really stands out as something special, and so far it's my game of the year. We'll see if it lasts. People just keep knocking Chicory down, so we'll see how, if anything, will overtake Deathloop and the Loop of Black Reef, but it was awesome.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say on that is just that, like, if anybody, as I sometimes do, listens to this spoiled because they think they'll never play the game and just wanted to, hear what the story's like, I think you'll still get a lot out of it. Like, even having spoiled what we've spoiled for you, you're going to have a great time. And there's so much like great pieces of writing that you'll enjoy that we didn't do justice or didn't even talk about.
Yeah, because mechanically it's fun to play because you can do so many different abilities and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you're totally right. Well, Janet and Leo, thank you guys so much for chatting Deathloop. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
And yeah, we'll you can find more. We have lots of Max spoilers for different games. I think you guys we all were on Resident Evil Village.
Yes.
I think I at least came in for a cameo on that one.
That's right.
So check that out. And of course, the deepest dive on Metroid Dread coming up. Please get ready for that. And thanks so much. Be good. Have fun. Let's go.
You can help support independent games media by subscribing to MinnMax on YouTube here, or you can support us over on Patreon to unlock exclusive shows like MinnMax Council. You can call into our podcast, you can put a picture of your choice on every MinnMax video, or you could have us plug your passion project on the MinnMax Show podcast. MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better, and we exist because of you. Any help telling a friend's appreciated.